Welcome into Blake Street Banter, where one of us knows what the word banter means. And once again, he's not here. Maybe he'll join us next week. We shall see. Eli, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, my man. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I am battling a little bit of a seasonal cold. Indiana decided to turn up to 60 degrees this week, which is great.
Cool.
I'm very happy. We're gonna get some storms later because of that, but it did shock my immune system a little bit. So that's right.
Yeah, we're getting blown around pretty good here in Boulder. Winds flying. I think it's 25 or 30 today, so I'm jealous.
Wow. Jeez, yeah. I can't complain about the weather. And even better, we get baseball tomorrow. Spring training, the games officially get underway. I want to say the Rockies they're against the Diamondbacks. I think it's 1:10 local time.
Yeah, 1:10 local.
And so a lot of exciting stuff happening. Opening day is when it really ramps up, and that's not too far away either. But as we look ahead to tomorrow, we have had a whole week since last week's show. And I think the first thing we'll dive into is by far the biggest headline. Everyone was talking about it. It might seem a little bit old now, but we got to cover it on the pod a little bit. Zach Veen went ahead, shout out to Thomas Harding, dropped the Rockies article of my life. Zach Veen put on over 40 pounds since the end of last season. He got sober this offseason. He talked about the internal struggles that he was going through. It was a great piece. So if you haven't read it yet, be sure to check that out. But Eli, what was your gut reaction to reading that? I think we talked about it before we hopped on live. It was just a shock to both of us.
Yeah, jarring. I will get into it from a baseball perspective, and we will get there. What's going on, Luke? But before anything else, I just want to say how happy I am for Zach Veen as a person. Just a phenomenal thing to hear that. He got sober and he seems to be on a better path. It just goes to show once again that these athletes are humans, and it's important for us to remember that. So very happy for Zach. I think people forget that he's the guy who was drafted out of high school. So there wasn't a whole lot of buffer in terms of being able to grow up. He left high school and was immediately a professional baseball player and inherently a grown up in that sense. I'm 22 years old, about to graduate college. The real world is a terrifying idea to me. So I can understand how difficult that transition must have been for him. But to touch on baseball, I think I told you before this, I woke up and saw Harding's article and Veen is the picture on the front. And I initially thought that it was some sort of misprint. It doesn't look at all like Zach Veen. I had to go through the B-roll that we had and take a look and really confirm. And I mean, it's crazy. 40 pounds in an off season. Immediate thought, hopefully, the power goes up a little bit with that. We see some of the power, the raw power that we saw when he was a bit younger. We haven't seen as much of it in recent years. Then we talk about the speed. You and I mentioned that a little bit. You hope it's still there. In the article, the high school coach that he was working with had mentioned that both his speed and his exit velos had gone up. The exit velo is obviously not hard to understand when you're putting on that much muscle. The speed remains to be seen. Hopefully that is correct. I'm not sure how much faster the guy can get, to be completely honest with you. So we'll see. Hopefully he can keep that speed and that athleticism, both as a threat on the base paths, which has obviously been a major talking point of the organization this season, and to be able to track down balls in the big outfield, of course.
Yeah. You hit everything I was thinking right on the head. What's going on, Isaac, in the chat? You have been cranking out more of the B-roll stuff on our social media than anyone, and it's been great. And we were talking, you saw the B-roll, didn't even recognize it was him. I wouldn't have either. And he on social media, on Instagram Reels, I've seen many big accounts tweet the same video that I think we saw, and they're like, it looks like Zach Veen ate Zach Veen. Sure, but I think it's going to be great. The guy's healthy again, which is so good. Obviously, the first concern that you talked about is the speed. Talking strictly baseball, we shall see. That was really his calling card during last year. He wasn't really able to keep up with velocity. I think that's putting it kindly, but he could always lay down a bunt. Sometimes too often, I think he relied on the bunt, but obviously made significant changes this offseason, and it adds to an outfield with a ton of speed. I think that's where we should go next. Another MLB.com article by Harding came out either this morning or yesterday afternoon. It talked about a lot of the small changes that the organization was making. Warren Schaefer was really excited to have the opportunity to coach and manage his first spring training as the head man. And part of that has been bringing back a lot of the fundamentals to what the team is trying to do. And so saw B-roll and pictures of the outfield groups just working on leads. And in the article, it mentioned that they were making sure that they were getting to their right lead length. And then they would have them do it with their eyes closed, blindfolded, you could say, just to make sure that you're getting to that right extension. Shafe talked about he's hoping to find more wins in the margins. So you hear that all the time in baseball, but doing the little things better, never a bad idea, especially when you're trying to improve from a season where you won 43 games. And I guess, do you have any thoughts on that, on those pieces of news coming out of spring training?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, you touched on it first. Warren Schaefer being the head of this club in spring this year, I think is a great thing. There was a lot of talk about whether he'd be back this year initially. I personally am happy he's back. I think that he is a great younger voice in the wider perspective of managers to help guide this young team. And I think he deserves a year where he gets to do it his way. He inherited a team that was already in a very bad way last year, and they got better when he came in. So I'm excited for that. In regards to the drills we've talked about, as I was going through the B-roll, I want to say it was yesterday, it is a lot of stuff in the margins. It's the fundamentals. You mentioned the outfield group. They had infielders doing that same base running drill at first. They actually had, I want to say it was every position player was doing a base running drill at third base, where they had multiple coaches there kind of sitting there talking about even the way you rotate your body, even small things. There were conversations regarding if you're running between third and home, say it's a ground ball to short and you get beat to the plate and you're in a rundown, as much time as you can don't really worry about scoring. Take up as much time as you possibly can. Let that runner try and get to second base. And even smaller things, like if you're going to get caught, take 2 steps towards the outside of the line and get low or fall down. So that extra margin of a second where the guy has to reach away from second base and tag you. It's the little things like that that make all the difference. So yeah, I think getting back to the fundamentals is a great thing. As you said, they didn't win a lot of games last year, and it starts with just the little things. You know what I mean? Just doing the little things right, even just playing good defense, winning on the bases. I think that those are essential parts of starting to turn this thing around.
Yeah. And Kyle Freeland in that article said, shoot, we've lost 100 games 3 years in a row. I have no problem with trying new stuff. And, it might seem trivial to the common fan to hear, our MLB players are doing this, but the Rockies have to find ways to build incremental victories that ultimately lead to more team success. Real quick, I want to get Isaac's question in here. He says, the Rockies have been pretty much bottom 3 in every base running metric since 2021. How important is speed in base running at Coors Field? And I'll go first, and then I'll let you add in. I think it's extremely important. Everyone always talks about, Coors Field, it's so easy to hit a home run there. That's why the offense is so high. No. Rockies fans know it's the wide gaps that really destroy teams and lead to big innings. And if you have a quick, efficient team, I'll actually attack it from the defensive side first. If you have efficient outfielders that can cut balls off before they get to the gap and limit, even if it's limiting a triple into a double, and on the rare case, you can cut a ball off, and if it's an average or below average runner, keep them at first instead of second. That's huge, because you're just getting 3 outs and escaping an inning at Coors Field, as we know, better than anyone, is brutal. And I got Eli, I'll let you take it from here, but on the offensive side of the ball, it's just as important.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. Defensively, it is just massive. And we've seen it. We've talked about it. The athletic outfielder build that they're clearly going for. McCarthy is an awesome example of that. And no disrespect to Mickey Moniak, great baseball player. I love Mickey. The defense wasn't good enough last year, and it hurt, and you could see that. So defensively, obviously, in that big outfield, like you said, it's the margins, limiting doubles from being triples, or even, a single from being a double if you can cut a ball off early. Offensively speaking, same kind of thing, being able to leg out some of those balls in the gap and get those extra bases. From a base running perspective, in terms of stealing, I don't know that Coors Field as a ballpark is somewhere where it's inherently more important to steal bases than anywhere else. But I think you could argue that a team like the Rockies, with a smaller payroll and maybe less big name talent, and probably going to have less extra base hits than other teams, if you can gain an advantage on the base paths, you know what I mean, by being able to swipe bases, which I think is really an important theme of this year. If you can turn base hit into a double with your base running in terms of stealing, that's just massive. And I think of a team like Milwaukee, it has utilized that so brilliantly in the last 2 or 3 years. Every single guy on that team can run, even if they aren't, the exit velos aren't perfect, but they play good defense. They run the bases really well. It's all the fundamentals, they bunt, and it's that stuff in the margins that we're talking about that we have seen be successful for other smaller market teams, if you will.
Yep. And you add to the mix, Hunter Goodman is one of the fastest catchers in the sport. I think the Rockies are well set up to have a much improved year. Isaac, thank you for the metrics pull. Just a much improved year, even to the eye tests, as we sit down and get ready to watch the games all season long. You mentioned Mickey Moniak, and the thought popped into my head, so I want to comment on it before it gets away from me. I watched the video this morning of him just kind of taking questions about the new approach that is happening at spring training this year. And he says, look, I've had so many great coaches throughout my career, but when you have a guy between the lines that's going to war with you, giving you tips and advice, it means all the more because you know that they're in the fight with you. And I think that speaks to the new style that the Rockies are trying this year. Who was it? It was Willie Castro. An interview with him came out, and he talked about how he came to Colorado because, number one, the playing time, and he knows the team is going to have a much better year than last year. But also, I think he's naturally stepping into a locker room where he can become a leader because of his tenor. He's not the oldest guy. If we talk about the Rockies pitching staff, now that is where all the ages. But Willie Castro, I mean, not the oldest guy, but has enough major league experience to bring a leadership to a club that needs it. I know when Charlie Blackmon retired, we kind of looked at Ryan McMahon as the next natural guy to lead. And Kyle Freeland, of course, is going to be there. But I think you need a good balance between pitching side of things and position players. Now that Rymack is gone, it could be Doyle, but I've actually spoken to him about he's much preferred to be the quieter leadership style, and he is ready to step into a more vocal role. But, I know you were commenting on it in the group chat this morning, so I'll let you share more of what you learned listening to Castro. But I think it's just a natural role that he could step into this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was impressed by Castro's interview. It was professional, but it wasn't professional in the sense where it's media trained and holding cards really close to the chest. He seems excited to be here. And he was open with his struggles in Chicago last year. He went from playing every day in Minnesota, and he was saying, you go from that to playing maybe once a week, and your body, it's just not right. You can't get in a rhythm. So I think he's excited for the opportunity here. And he said that he believes that it's going to be a better year, and that if things keep going in the correct direction and things are done the right way, that there's a very bright future ahead of this roster. So I loved all the answers I heard from him. Touching on the leadership thing in other places, I thought Mickey Moniak did a really good job of expressing that. He was talking about the roster a little bit last year and how it was a lot of young guys getting their feet wet and taking time to adjust at the major league level. And I don't think that there's a better player on this roster to talk about that than Mickey Moniak, former number 1 overall pick who had his struggles in multiple different places. He spoke on the fact that it took him 3 years to really feel like he belonged, like he was a major league ball player, and how he got help from guys like Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber and Mike Trout. What a list of names, by the way.
Yeah, seriously.
But the fact that he feels like now he is stepping into that role a little bit. He's been in the league a long time and he feels like he can help these younger guys and be a leader. So he's certainly another guy that I look at. Even you hear Goodman tossed around, and absolutely as one of the best players, you're inherently going to be looked at in the locker room as a bit of a leader. But we have to remember that this is Hunter's third year in the majors. Really, last year was his first full year with consistent playing time. He's still acclimating to that too. And I think that he understands that it shouldn't entirely be on his shoulders.
Yeah, and a good point with Hunter being young. I think he's younger than a lot of fans think. He came through the system extremely fast. Almost broke about every home run record you could in such a short time span. And fired up the ranks. Shout out Felix, Rockies Nation in the house. And then I want to get to this question from Isaac real quick. He says, for the ones on the podcast, on the listening version only, he says, Noah, does being tall help with being a Rockies fan? And Eli, if you were tall, I'm sorry for not asking you. I guess I'll answer and then you can get some get back. But sure. If you can stand tall to the blows from people, a lot of the times being a Rockies fan, we absorb low blows. So I would argue it actually doesn't help. But that's my answer to a fun question. What about you, Eli?
Well, my first answer is a question for you. I'd actually be curious, how tall are you? Because in pictures, you look like the BFG. I don't really have any frame of reference here.
6'5".
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. Well, to answer Isaac, I do feel a bit offended. I'm 6'3" on my own. I'm not 6'5", but I consider myself to be relatively tall. That's why I played basketball growing up. Also ended my baseball career. Just didn't grow into the body. Big strike zone, long arms. Couldn't. Anything inside was not happening. I don't know. I guess it helps. I don't know.
A fun question, man. I didn't know you. I didn't realize you were 6'3". I get out to Colorado. We got to run the twos.
Dude, yeah. I gotta get hooping, man. It's the longest I've gone without picking up a basketball in my whole life. It's probably been almost a year now. I got locked in on the hole and caught the running bug. So I've been stuck on that, but gotta get hooping again soon.
On that note, I have a really quick question.
Yeah.
Last year, you tried to pick up Lewis Mike, whatever we want to call him, his little practice of running a mile for, I don't know if it's every run the Rockies allow or every run the Rockies lose by. Can you fill me in?
Started with lose by, and then as I really, really started to pick up marathon training and really became, more of a runner and actually, was going every day, I switched to runs allowed. Sorry, I just saw Isaac's comment.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It wasn't enough. And then we did switch to runs allowed, and then it was too much. And I just, I didn't quite follow through the way that I would have liked to. I wasn't in the shape at that time. My legs weren't built. My motor, if you will, wasn't strong enough to do it. I'm thinking about it this year. I certainly have the capability to do it now. If it was runs allowed, I could do it. There are going to be some tough weeks, but like that Pirates game, I remember seeing that, and I was at a Grateful Dead concert, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't run what is 16 miles tomorrow. I can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I actually think this year it would be more attainable because of the staff that they're building. And shout out Luke. He's not quite RJ Pettit. That dude is insane. And I think his last name almost being Petite is perfect. What if I can look it up really quick, but I believe he's 6'6",
300 on the dot. He's massive.
6'8", 300, according to Google AI. So
with a phenomenal mustache, by the way. That guy's got some serious stash action going on.
You still talking about Isaac? Eli, I've looked through your Instagram a couple times, but I never guessed you were 6'3". And Isaac then signs off that he's 5'11". That's not short. So I think we could really put together quite the basketball squad if we all get together for a BSB intramural tournament.
Yeah, I'm with it.
And then Evan in the chat was out there Thursday through Monday and saw RJ Pettit. Dude is a mountain. Yeah. He's a freak of nature. I cannot wait to see him on the bump.
Oh
Imagine, take me through your mind. You just talked about your baseball career. Take me through the mind of getting in the batter's box and staring down the barrel of him.
I hope that I walk. Probably
Yeah.
not going up there looking for much. Could never hit a curveball either, so there wasn't a lot going right for me by the end of that. As soon as breaking balls came into play, it was pretty much done for me.
Hey, I'm with you. That's why I switched to basketball. Getting right back to the Rockies real quick. Chris Bryant had media availability this week, and friend of the pod, Kevin Henry, did a great job of documenting it with video. And really quick, because last week we talked about if we ever think he would play again, and then he gave a lot of good context for that. He was asked about considering retirement, and I'm just going to read this quote so that the listeners at home can hear it straight from him. He says, "I honestly try not to let myself get there, just because when you're going through it every single day, you just try to make it day to day." And then keeps talking, but he ultimately says, "I haven't let myself get there." He's 34 years old, just came off a week talking to the media saying it hurts to get out of bed, bending over every single day. I feel horrible for the human, and I know we talked about this last week, but it goes without saying, like, no fan would ever wish this on a star. You hear him, I'm trying to balance the quotes of "I wake up every day with pain" and also "I have not considered retirement." What do you make of that, Eli? Is it, I don't want to say denial because that is just so short-sighted and everything, but
Yeah, I talked on Twitter a little bit about this with our guy Kenny. Again, like you said, first and foremost, you just feel for the guy as a human being. He didn't sign that contract with the intention of not playing. He didn't. This is not his ideal scenario in any vicinity. And the guy's a father too, and Warren Schaefer talked about it a little bit as well. Like, he wakes up every day in pain. It's difficult to bend down. That extends to every part of your life, and it just makes everything more difficult. So, leading with that, yeah, I can understand the frustration, and we'll get into that. But I encourage people to lead with compassion a little bit more. We can have the baseball conversations, but I would encourage people to try and, once again, it's the human being. Let's treat him as such. From a baseball perspective, it's difficult. He is not any closer to putting the cleats on than he was at the end of last year. He may even be further away. This doesn't seem to be getting any better. Would be wonderful if it did, but right now it just doesn't feel like the most realistic possibility. So I think it's difficult for him. All he's ever known is baseball. That guy is a baseball player. He's an MVP. He's a World Series champion. And to just have to hang up the cleats, especially when it's not really on your own terms, is a very difficult thing to come to terms with. So I don't know. I really do have a hard time seeing him play again for the Rockies, if at all. And it's difficult from a salary perspective and for a million different reasons. But I'm going to be rooting for the guy, if not for a baseball player, just as a human, so that he can wake up and feel okay again. That's my biggest thing.
yeah, I think you nailed it. And I don't want to harp on the baseball side of things, and you covered the humanity side perfectly. So I will move on. We're getting quite a great look at what's happening at spring training in the chat. Shout out Evan. And Eli will be at spring training soon. So we're going to have our own insider representing Blake Street Banter, which is super exciting. But Evan says he was able to watch Pearson Ole, one of our new additions. Actually, he was the catcher for Pearson Ole, which is pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. He says the plus command and plus changeup was nasty. I'm super excited for Ole to get to Coors Field and see how his repertoire translates at altitude. He also, Evan says, Senza is at spring training throwing a dirty sinker. That is good to hear. Senza, pitch to contact guy, figures to rely on double plays. So hopefully at Coors that'll play. I know the BSB staff has been putting together a really cool series on which pitches work best at altitude. So be sure to check that out on the website if you guys haven't already. I want to get to this question from, we'll say Z is his name. He says, have y'all heard any information about new pitch developments? I know Dolander has been working on a sweeper. I can't answer this question directly, but I'll base it off of what I heard Dolander say in a video. He says he's super pumped up about all the new information that the pitchers are getting access to. And I know an article came out in the offseason about the Rockies. A former pitcher basically blasted the organization because the Rockies would hide some of those numbers from their own pitchers, which is interesting in itself. I won't get into that. But Dolander saying that really confirms to me and affirms to all the fans that things are happening way differently than they have in the past. I'll get your thoughts on real quick everything. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. Shout out to everyone participating.
Going crazy today.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, literally exactly how you just put it is exactly kind of how Chase put it the other day. He opened up by saying this year is way different. I feel how everyone else feels. I'm excited. It's an entirely new staff, and having guys like Matt Daniels, who was one of the first members of the Driveline program, which is now just everywhere. That's phenomenal. I can't speak to how it's been in other years. I can speak off what I've heard. But once again, when I'm watching these clips from spring training, it feels like even when you're watching a row of 7 guys taking a bullpen, there's pretty much a coach to every guy. And there's a conversation after just about every pitch. You know what I mean? We've got pitching coaches talking to the catchers about where they should be trying to have this ball spotted, and pitchers getting feedback on every pitch. And even Warren Schaefer said it the other day, talking about the same thing, about how excited he is. The fact that it's more, I think the word he used is collaborative. It's not a coach telling you what to do. It's not, you have to do this. It's, here's what we could do. I'm going to give you this information. As Chase put it, they're going to give us all the information, and whether we want to use it or not is on us, but the information is available, but it's not a command per se. You know what I mean? There's not a hierarchy in that sense.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. Evan, again, in the chat, sharing more insight. So he caught this week Ole, Vodnik, Freeland, Pettit, Hill, Thompson, Senza, Castellano. That is Iverson Castellano. I hope I'm saying that right. He's the 24-year-old. He was selected by the Twins last year in the Rule 5 draft, and then went to the Phillies because he wasn't put on the opening day roster. So, oh my gosh, a lot of incredible experience in the chat. Just trying to keep up with it for the listeners at home that can't see it. And then Isaac asked about our boy Castellano. He said, Evan, thoughts on him? I have him as the most underrated offseason acquisition so far for the Rockies. So that means a lot coming from Isaac. He knows everything about the Rockies system inside and out. And Evan says, definitely an uncomfortable at bat for any right-hander, despite only being 6'3". Only. Eli, how about that?
I knew you would. I knew you
would. His extension's elite, and I'm sure it creates all kinds of problems for the hitters. Wow. I mean, we're learning just as much as the listeners are today from the incredible chat. That's why BSB is on top. I mean, where else are you getting this information in live time? So huge shout out to Evan D. Podesta in the chat. And shoot, a little bio. Evan's a senior in high school catcher, but the last name has brought a couple sweet opportunities over the last month. Hell yeah, dude. Enjoy it. That is a dream. High school was the end of my baseball career, so I would have loved to keep going. I don't know. Eli, what did you wrap up?
It's probably 12.
Oh, 12.
I will say my squad, we brought home a Bay Area championship, not an all-star team, just my team, but we brought home I went out on top. I Peyton Manning that, John.
Dude, you went out on top. COVID hit, and that's when I stepped aside. So I would take your way out all the time. But Evan, that is super cool. Really appreciate you hopping in the chat. Yeah, you're the man. I do want to, so we have just a couple more things on our list to cover. Maybe even this is the last one. But our insider Eli, the man himself, pointed out through watching some B-roll that he saw Cole Carrick taking grounders at short. Tell the listeners why that's significant.
Yeah. It's just interesting, It's interesting because Cole was a guy who played a lot of different positions in college. He even pitched a little bit. He pitched, he played short, he caught. And I don't really know that we knew exactly what he was going to be exactly, or when we drafted him, or when the Rockies did, I should say. But he hasn't played shortstop in a professional game outside of maybe some spring ball last year. But in terms of his time in the minors, he has not played shortstop since 24. Even then, across a couple of different levels, he made, I think, a total of 22 starts. So it's interesting. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it because he transferred full-time to center field last year in Hartford and was nothing short of phenomenal. He's got an incredible arm. He throws a frozen rope from center. He's got all the range with that elite speed. So I don't know exactly what to make of it. I have a hard time seeing it being a long-term development, just in the sense that Tovey is the shortstop and is under contract for the foreseeable future. But it's interesting nonetheless to see him taking those reps and to see guys like Ryan Ritter taking reps at third base too, which was something that we touched on a little bit last week.
Yeah. You like seeing these guys have some versatility, just creates more options for Warren Schaefer as the Rockies try to build a winning product. Cow Bizzle, what's the deal at first base? Until the games start getting played, it'll be really tough to see where the club is leaning. We figure that it'll be some sort of platoon, but the options still remain. We'll go over them. But Blaine Krim ended the year last year with the club. Then the Rockies brought in Troy Johnston. Willie Castro can play first. They made the
Julian.
Yep, Edward Julian. They traded for TJ Rumfield from the Yankees, and he's got a profile that plays well at Coors Field. I wrote an article on that. Check it out, BlakeStreetBanter.com. Free plug. And then, of course, Charlie Condon. So lots of options.
Applaud you really fast. I got to give love to my guy, Sterling Thompson. I want to see some reps first. He can do it. He can do it. So just one more to throw into the mix. Anyway, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
To your just options upon options. I don't know how the Rockies are going to make that decision. I'm sure it'll be clear with the at-bats they hand out in spring training, which of course starts tomorrow. Shout out Evan, though. He's checking out. Got to get back to class. He says it's an awesome group of guys, and he's excited for the very near future. Much love, Evan, man. We appreciate you. Got to have you on the pod, sometime if you're going to be our insider in the chat. But yeah, really cool to see the versatility happening in the infield. As with the games starting tomorrow, do you have the starter is not announced unless it has been since we were recording, but I doubt it. Who do you want to see on the bump tomorrow?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. That's a tough one to answer. I don't know that I have a preference necessarily for the starter. If I'm just looking right now, guys, I want to see Tanner Gordon. People kind of on that bubble, if you will. Gordon, Feltner's very interesting to me. A name that hasn't been talked about very much at all, who I think actually has an outside chance of maybe not even an outside chance, but a chance of being on this roster is Carson Palmquist, who was phenomenal for a very long time and obviously had some struggles last year. But you know what? I'll go with Palmquist because I'm interested to see what this offseason has looked like. And in terms of relief pitchers, there are not a lot of left-handed guys. So there's a window for him there if he has a strong spring.
Yeah, I like that. And I'll give my pick. I don't know if you can be our little researcher for Luke's question in the chat. But I would love to see Gabe Hughes get on the mound. I don't know. For a while, it became a thing with oh my God, Michael Tolia, almost blanked on his name, where we were like, all right, he's a first rounder. Let's see him play. I don't want that to become the case with Hughes, but when you're drafted in the first round and the club knows you have so much talent and arm talent, I really, really want to see him have a strong spring and make a push to get on the squad this year. He's got to stay healthy. I know he's been ruined with injuries for the last couple of years, but he's getting back to where he needs to be. Wild with kind of a fun question for tomorrow's game. Is Nolan Arenado playing his first game against the Rockies? Of course, the new Diamondback. I think, I don't know. Like, how often do you see the Stars play in day one? I think a good amount, but he didn't get there until pretty late.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have any idea.
It'd be
Would be
cool.
a fun storyline, but it's we don't even know the starting pitchers yet. So
Yeah.
For sure that. And then that question from Luke. Luke asked for those on just audio. He said, "Are Rumfield and Sterling Thompson true lefties or just left-handed bats?" I don't even actually have to look this up because I meant to mention it earlier. I knew it was Sterling. I didn't know with Rumfield. They are both right-handed throwing or right-handers, the defensive side of the ball. So that is something to consider. I was watching the B-roll of some first base the other day and saw Rumfield. I didn't know it was him because obviously right hand or yeah, I think I said that right.
Yeah.
Rumfield's right-handed. Wait, or is he a lefty hitter? He's a lefty hitter. I'm getting mixed. There's too many names at first base. I'm losing track.
Hey, I'll tell you, when writing an article and seeing the guy throws right and hits left, it becomes a little tricky in my mind which one to put down.
Right.
But yeah, you nailed it. And then one last question from Isaac, and then getting pretty close to wrapping up. Luis Peralta is one of 4 pitchers in the Rockies system that is under 6 foot tall. Do left-handed people who are shorter get more opportunities than tall right-handers? I think an argument is there to be made.
So Isaac, I'm going to assume, is left-handed, and I have to say that's the most Isaac thing I've ever heard. You would be left-handed, Isaac, and take that as you will. But I've never been less shocked by another fact ever.
Of course not. Shout out Anthony. What's up, everyone? Hope everyone is doing well. Yeah, us too. To all you guys in the chat, this has been one of the most active chats in my pod history with BSB. And it's so much fun when it's like this. And then Wild said, is it pitch count they watch or innings worked or matchups against left and right-handers for pitchers in spring training? I'm sure it's a mix of all three, but pitch count is more important than innings, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everyone is told, like, if you have 40 pitches, you better get through 2 innings. If they reach 40 pitches before they get to 2 innings, they're going to come out. You're protecting arms in spring. I guess I'm going to end with a question to you, Eli, and then we can say our piece and get out of here. I think in recent years, the Rockies have actually fared pretty well in spring training. They come out of the gates hot, and then, they might end up right at 500, maybe even below, but it feels like they always start hot. Obviously, that hasn't transitioned and translated into regular season wins. How do you evaluate team success in spring? Does it matter at all, the win-loss record?
I'm completely unconcerned with wins and losses. It's great to see some wins, and again, I'm not in the locker room, so I can't speak for how that may impact mentality and confidence. Maybe those wins are a great thing for everybody together, to build some confidence. But generally speaking, it's just getting back into the swing of things, and it's player evaluation for guys on the roster bubble. And this spring, more so than ever, I think every game is going to have serious meaning for somebody in regards to where they start this year, whether that is in Albuquerque or whether that is in Colorado, or really for some guys, whether that is with a different organization, just because you only have so many spots. So me personally, what I'll be watching for is the bullpen. I think is interesting. You can carry 8 guys. They've got more than 8 guys. So we're looking at that. First base is obvious too. And just guys who put the ball in the zone, see for both starters and relievers who is consistently hitting the strike zone. Because if we've learned one thing in this offseason, it's that if you can't throw strikes, you're probably not going to throw much at all.
Yeah, that's a bar. You ended with a bar. And the Rockies might have that up in the clubhouse right now, painted across the ceiling. It doesn't matter. Honestly, while I want the pitching to succeed, spring training, to me, not all the games are broadcasted. We all know that. And just this year, every park got the StatCast tech. So at least we can keep up with them on the little Gamecast thing. I love 10 to 8 spring training games where the players are probably there longer than they want to be, but the fans that are there in the heat, they get what they paid for and are there to see. I'll end it with this from Luke. You guys know what the opposite of right-handed is? Wrong-handed. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
As a right-handed guy myself. Eli, where can the people find you?
Find me on Twitter here at Eli. I wish it was Whitney. There's no I. High school just wasn't paying attention, and we're here now. So find me on Twitter here. That's pretty much it for my coverage. You can find me, on the Blake Street website with the articles I write there. But the majority of my coverage throughout this spring and throughout the summer will be on my Twitter account or just through the @Blake Street Banter account.
Yep, and he's been putting out a ton of good stuff on the blog side of things as well. Find me at Noah Spyrick, and most of my articles are tweeted straight from the BSB Twitter account. We really appreciate you guys all in the chat. This has been a fun one. And as the games get going, go Rocks. Play the outro on the